All right, now say Voices River City. Donate to our Patreon. Very good, Olive.
All right. So how's everyone else's quarantine going?
We've been working on this song for weeks.
Yeah, these guys got a nice duet going on. Wonderful.
Neighbors love it.
Well, I feel like this Be Brave, Bold Robot thing is going to sound like trash after that, but I guess we can play it anyway.
Voices, the things they said. Voices, some from those dead. All the voices heard. Voices, things we say. Voices, they're in your head. All the voices heard.
Hello, everybody. You've got Kempa.
And Skylar.
And Flo.
And
no Shannon.
No Shannon today.
No, Shannon's a little under the weather, so she's taking the day off to rest up and feel better.
Mm-hmm. In her endless battle with her gallbladder, it sounds like the day today goes to the bladder, or the G bladder, and that's different from a normal bladder.
The old G blad.
I'm not a doctor.
Oh goodness, yes.
You think they would just rename it something else, right?
I think
what's it blatting?
I feel that way about the Dakotas. Like, do we need 2 Carolinas and 2 Dakotas? We couldn't have just come up with 2 different state names.
Yeah. Or like,
yeah, good call.
And like, what a total just kick to the side of West Virginia that it doesn't even get to be like the original.
Right.
Yeah. And you might as well
if you're going to break off, you may as well come up with your own name.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, this is the same place where we have, a New Haven, a New York, a New Jersey. Like, we weren't, folks were not exactly super creative in coming up with names for places.
Yeah. Well, we should have called this West Bladder, maybe. Anyway, get better, Shannon.
Yeah.
Yes. Shannon, get better.
Shannon's gallbladder is canceled. I'm just going to do it.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
It's long overdue.
Cancel Shannon's gallbladder. #. I did that backwards.
It gave up on her before she gave up on it. That's
true.
That's my running. Mm-hmm. It did. So.
Well, I guess we'll dive into it. Just a heads up to everybody. We are recording on the big day of giving. That would be Thursday, May 7th. We are not a participating org in the big day of giving, but we always let people know what it means to us to be a monthly patron. This stuff takes time. It takes money. We got to buy the equipment, and we're just trying to create cool stuff for you and create a public service, really, not just in the form of this podcast, but also in the form of the Follows the Money Project, and just having a platform where community voices can speak truth to power. So if you've given on the big day of giving, even if you haven't, please consider becoming a patron on our Patreon. It's it's patreon.com/voicesrivercity. And we also, if you want to do a one-time donation, find our PayPal. So all you have to do is go to voicesrivercity.com and then click on the support VRC tab. It'll take you to our donate page. And down at the bottom, you'll see our PayPal donor thing. So yeah, that's it. Flo, you've been giving today, right?
Yes, I have. I have my picks. I'm trying to make this as competitive as possible since we don't have any sports to watch. So I'm trying to make it a thing. It's not really a thing. There are 600 organizations in the region that are very likely all doing great work. I don't know what some of them do because I'm just not familiar, but it was a really hard decision to make to decide which organizations to support. But I think I had 9 or 10 today. So that was what my morning was spent doing, and it felt nice. It certainly is a privilege to even have income, let alone enough to be able to share with others. So
yeah, this year I was not able
that.
to be a giver the way I was in previous years, and I'm just accepting that because this is the reality of today, you know.
No.
So
yeah, and so we certainly understand that, and we understand, you know, for the folks listening, you know, if you're not able to give, please keep listening. And for those of you who have been able to give,
and even if you even if we ever do start doing anything behind a paywall, you can literally, if you like the show that much and you just want to consume whatever it is that's behind it, I will personally send it to you. This is not a thing that anyone who doesn't have money needs to worry about on our show. So yeah. Why don't we jump in just with a few coronavirus updates, right? Because it feels like things have been happening here in California, here at the county level. Sky, why don't we throw it to you? And let's just start in whichever direction you want there, because there's a few storylines here.
Well, first off, I think one thing that we should definitely touch on is that Sacramento County is offering drive-up coronavirus testing, and unlike before, you don't have to be symptomatic to be accepted for it. So there's a site, we'll link to the site in the show notes, where you can go and request an appointment. I would judging from the comments that I was reading on the B page on this, I would be prepared for there to be some hiccups, because I think they're, with the restructuring and with doing it so that you don't have to be symptomatic, I think that there's a restructure going on. I don't think it's been seamless. So give it a shot. And yeah, I mean, let us know what your what happens with you making an appointment and whatnot. But you should just be able to make yourself an appointment, drive up, they swab out your nose, and then it takes anywhere from a day to 5 or 6 days, and then they'll get back to you with the results. They can process something 350 of these a day, I think is what I read. So it's pretty good. I don't know. I mean, it's 350 a day seems good, but it also seems like it'll take decades for all of us to get that done at that rate, right?
Well, I assume, and Flo, I mean, you could speak to this, but I would assume that it's just that's our reality with tests right now. We don't have enough, nobody does, and also it takes time to run them. So we don't have enough swabs for everybody, and then it takes time to run the tests. And also, I mean, looking at the Sacramento County data on the state website, it looks like we are averaging, and this is confirmed cases, anywhere between 6 and 14 on a given day, which was really surprisingly low to me. And that's not to say there's not all sorts of asymptomatic people out there too.
Yeah.
Right. So, the thing that I think beyond just the testing, and I probably mentioned this on the show before, is that all tests are not created equal. Right. And so the concern I have right now is that there are 2 different types of tests. And without kind of getting into too technical a description, one test is testing whether or not you're sick right now. And so that test is kind of a yes, no, right now. The other one is a test to see, were you possibly sick in the past, and do you have antibodies? And antibodies are one of the things that we would use to be able to say you've had an infection in the past, your body was able to fight it off, launched a strong enough immune response that now you may have some protection. The problem is we don't know that yet. And so if there was a test you were going to get and you were asymptomatic, if you really haven't had any contact with anybody who has tested positive, you probably would want to get the antibody test, because then you'd be able to know, have you been infected since, say, January or December, when we think there is a possibility this may have been circulating, and did you potentially develop antibodies? If you think you may have been exposed more recently, if you are, working in a place where you have more contact with people or someone around you was sick, then you want to get the test that just determines whether or not you might be sick right now. But the one that they're offering to most people is whether or not you're sick right now. And so it won't tell us if you were infected in the past. So I think in order for us to really feel confident about moving forward with making any decisions based on testing, we really should have a good combination of both. How many people are currently sick and how many people already had this? And then ideally, we would want to know, of the people who had it already, are they actually no longer at risk?
Right.
Because the last thing we would want to do is make decisions thinking, okay, all these people have already had it, so we're good. And then we reopen and a bunch of those people get reinfected because, yes, they had it in the past, but they're not immune.
Right. Or there's the possibility that the mutated one from the East Coast has come over here and they're not immune to that one or whatever.
Right.
And that's a great point to bring up too, Dave, because viruses mutate all the time. But it usually takes a while before they mutate in a way that a vaccine that's developed for it would not work. And so that's something important to recognize, is that it is very likely that the disease that is spreading on the East Coast is somewhat different than the one that may be spreading on the West Coast and in other places around the country. But those viruses are all similar enough and will be similar enough likely for a while that by the time we come out with a vaccine, it will still be able to be useful to people.
Yeah.
Cover that umbrella. Okay.
So another question that I
good.
had is, like, if I'm like a healthy mid-range adult, it's probably like, given the fact that we do have like a limited number of swabs and a limited number of people who can go get this test, like, it's probably not a good idea for me to like go take this test right now, right? If I'm not symptomatic or I'm not worried about it, because I'm kind of using up resources that are in limited supply by doing that. Yeah. I mean, what's your take on that?
That is true to a large extent. The challenge is things are changing, right? And so now we're not so overwhelmed with cases that we can't test asymptomatic people anymore, and we are having increased test availability. And so there is a question of how often these messages are changing and people kind of getting stuck in their heads something, and then we have to come back and say, okay, now change that. And then they're like, but if we still don't have enough, should I? And so I'm kind of worried that because of how quickly things are moving, it's hard to keep up with what's the latest. Are we getting health care if we need it, or are we staying home if we think we're going to weather the storm? Are we wearing masks today or are we not? Is it gloves? Yes or no? Like, what are we doing here, right? And I think that that's the unfortunate part that's happening with testing, is like people were trying so hard to get it at first. And now we have to have this very nuanced conversation of, okay, we do want people to get tested, but which test should you get based on what your more likely scenario is? Like, I haven't had contact with anybody except my husband, who hasn't had contact with anybody except me in weeks. So I would really like to know if that thing I had in January, late January and early February was COVID, right? That's the more pressing question to me than, is there a small chance that I contracted it from, a bag of my groceries that I didn't quite spray enough, right? That's my bigger risk right now. And I'd love to know that, but the question still remains, even if I do, does that mean I'm immune, or does that just tell me that I already had it and I could be even higher risk next time? Who knows?
Right. And those antibody tests aren't widely available by any stretch yet.
They're not. They are available, but they're not widely available just yet.
Okay. And they're looking at that in the next month or so at least, right?
That is the plan.
Okay, cool.
To have more of them available over time so that people can test, because that also will allow us to be able to better sense when the peak of this was or will be, right? Mm. We're not entirely, sure because we're not sure when exactly it started.
Yeah. Well, and so all of these tests are important. This one, because that can help us down a path towards, an actual working vaccination, among other things. It could also show us what percentage of the population is good to go, right?
Right.
The other test can let us know kind of where we stand in a given moment throughout the country. And we haven't had a good picture of that at all in the U.S. since it started blowing up here, which is possibly part of why we are among, if not the worst hit countries in the world. So I think this might be a good seg from these tests are really important, and they're really important for us, for data, for our epidemiologists and politicians to determine how and when and where to start opening up, correct?
Yes. And they're also helpful if you have been in contact with people to be able to know if you're asymptomatic or not, because we want everybody to be engaging in preventive behaviors, but you want to be engaging in the most restrictive of them if you're actually sick, right? So right now, you're living in a household and maybe it's a few people there, 3, 4, 5, and you're all hanging out together because you're at home together. But if one of you is sick, you're not going to just all snuggle up on the couch together, right? You're going to try to isolate more and that sort of thing. So that's really where the current test for do you have it now could be really helpful, is if you have been in contact with people, if you've been taking public transportation, if you've been in public spaces, if you are one of the people who is still working and having contact with people and more surfaces than usual and that sort of thing, you may want to get tested, because that will allow you to be able to tap into the CARES Act benefits and be able to get some sick time if you're still working, and be able to take care of yourself, but also to engage in those really, really preventive activities that are a little more restrictive, but for a short period of time so that you don't infect the other people in your household.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like STD tests, but for contact.
Right.
How do you think you get an
And
STD?
yes. And now they're also going to be hiring some contact tracers around the state to be able to help with identifying more cases. So it's very similar. Infectious diseases all have things in common, and contact tracing is usually a little easier with sexual partners because the number of people you can infect in a day is
misread if that's contact or not.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I saw the movie It Follows. I get it.
Right. Exactly. So luckily, these people who are going to be trained as contact tracers are going to have a slightly harder time, but also a far less sexy exploration of people's exploits. Because I sat next to her on the bus versus, oh yeah, that was Saturday night and that was Thursday night, and call her back because that was Tuesday through Friday and the week before, right?
I imagine someone's life is probably like that, but at this point, I've been in quarantine so long, I can't even remember how anything works.
I don't even know. Yeah, I'm gonna have to retake sex ed when we're done with this.
You don't know how to make the sex anymore?
I think I've fully forgotten. Yeah. It's
all. I'll figure it out.
It's all Twitter brain now. Yeah. Okay, so, but, Newsom, our governor, as well as our mayor, Darrell Steinberg, and county officials, they've all started speaking about steps to start reopening, right? Flo, to what degree would you say this is reasonable on Newsom's part, on our county officials' parts, and with the steps that we are currently taking locally?
Well, real quick, there's some different levels of this that they've been doing. So the last show we did was the day I think that Newsom announced that certain counties would be able to open up like retail stores, like bookstores and art stores and whatever, for curbside service and like delivery. But like almost immediately following that, after our last show came out, the county director of health services came out and said that like we can start opening hotels and doing dine-in service in restaurants possibly as soon as next Thursday. So there's like kind of different, and it's also like, you know, like we were saying last week, it's different by county, right? So there's some counties that really haven't had any occurrences of this, and then there's other counties where they're a little more at stake. I don't know. I personally was kind of shocked to see the director of health services say that he thinks we're going to be eating inside restaurants as soon as next week. I don't know. That seems really fast and really kind of seems risky to me, but I don't know. Flo, what do you think?
So I think, you know, the challenge here is what happens at the same time, and, you know, how good people are about the other protective behaviors that could help to stop the spread. I am a little surprised that dine-in restaurants are one of the things on the, you know, soon to happen list. I thought that before that happened, more businesses would be able to open. So I'm actually a little bit surprised at the order right now, especially because dining in involves all of the things that could really help this to spread, right? It's prolonged duration. It's usually close proximity. People are sitting near each other. You're taking things and putting them in your mouth, right?
So you can't be wearing a mask.
Your face, you're clean, right? So you can't be wearing a mask. Like
right.
It's almost one of our most high risk social activities is when we're consuming food.
Well, and
so I would think that would be one of the last things that would be opening back up would be consuming food together.
It's also like, it's concerning to me because these guys seem like they're really casual. Like it seems like a lot of like the leadership is casual about this, where it's like this guy has something about like, you know, oh, well, you know, yeah, you can't eat while you're wearing a mask. I guess we'll figure that out as we go. And then like Steinberg is giving an interview with the guy from the Bee, making jokes about like, oh, maybe we'll have feed bags, ha ha. And it's like, all right, like, you know, whatever, like, yeah, let's keep it lighthearted, but also that's a serious fucking concern. Like, you can't just laugh that off. Like, yeah, it's a bunch of people indoors with one another, not wearing masks. Like, that doesn't seem to me to be like a, ho, we'll figure that out as we go kind of a thing, you know?
Right. And especially, I mean, a lot of it would depend on the configuration of businesses, because you could very easily have a lot of contamination with people walking by tables to get to their own, even if they're not sitting nearby or sitting in, you know, closer proximity. So the real question would be, you know, would all diners have to be 6 feet apart? And like, would you be able to only, you know, presumably dine with people who are from your household? Are we now encouraging people to go out and meet up with other people? You know, there are some questions about how that would be implemented that could be concerning.
I think like their thing right now
that we're not. Yeah, well, I was gonna say, I think it's telling that we're not opening up like large venues, right? But not recognizing that restaurants could have a similar impact depending on the size of the restaurant and the configuration. And that seems like it would be a little challenging to work out by next Thursday, let's say.
Right, that's way
for all the restaurants that would want to
work out the logistics of something like that, and the education for restaurant owners and management. You know, they have talked about how future openings of restaurants would mean maybe at least half the seating, right?
Right. I think that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I think like all of the restaurants are planning on like reconfiguring their floor plans so that the tables are like pretty far away from each other and whatnot, which is fine. Like I get that, and I'm happy to see people taking those precautions. But like another thing that like bugs me about it, like as a member of the service industry, is like the casual approach to like patrons not wearing masks like belies this thing where you're not taking the safety of these workers very seriously. Like you're not wearing the mask for your own safety first. It's for everybody else's. I mean, what are the numbers? It's like you're like 25% safe from other people's if you're wearing a mask, but other people are like 75% safe from you or something along those lines.
And then on top of that, you're spending X amount of hours of your day doing that too.
Exactly. And being around a bunch of people who aren't masked, like your risk is really, really high.
Yeah.
The
infection rate of MTA workers in New York, it's just incredible, right?
Right. Well, it's the same thing for like grocery store workers and whatnot. I mean, and we keep having cases like a Walmart right around here. Somebody just caught it. One of the workers had it, and it was like a whole thing and whatnot. And I don't know. It's just like that to me. Like, there's already, I feel like, kind of this kind of this classism thing going on with like, oh yeah, the workers, that whatever, that's what it is. Like, it's really the patrons we have to be worried about. And it's like, no, like, you can't just tell the workers like, show up in your mask and, you know, hope for the best. Like, there has to be, you as an employer owe your fucking employees more than that, you know, if you want to open up and make your money.
The thing that annoys me the most about it is, and I see a lot of kind of libs do it, it's the lionization of these sort of frontline workers at retail establishments and, you know, people who are, you know, driving transit or whatever. And it's this sort of like, you know, you are heroes and, you know, thank you to our heroes out there working. And it's like, no, like we really don't have to place them in harm's way.
No, these people are not heroes. They're martyrs of capital.
Yes. And we could have created an environment where they felt as safe as our business class does, sitting 8 hours in front of a home computer every day and getting paid to do that. But we refuse to do that because the United States is a service economy, and our interests of capital could not survive if we let it go without, you know, for 2 months of like actually protecting these people from harm.
Well, it's also like, to me, every time I hear anybody be like, oh, like our Safeway workers are heroes or whatever, I'm like, then I want to see you on the front fucking lines of getting these guys a livable wage then. Like, when this is fucking over, like all of you guys who are calling these people heroes, being like, oh, our delivery people, you like,
they deserve hazard pay.
They deserve to be able to fucking live in a decent place and have a decent life with the money they're making then. Are you telling me that we can just underpay heroes and that's great? Or are we good with that? You know? And I would like to say that I hope we'll see people being cooler about that going forward, but I kind of don't. We'll see how that goes, you know? But I don't know. Like, service industry people right now do deserve a higher pay, and they have for a long time, but especially now, you know.
And I'm cynical at a meta level as well, because there is just our prioritization of capital that makes this particularly harmful for workers. But then there's also this weird thing that happens, I guess I shouldn't even call it weird, this intentional thing that happens where we have invested in the technology to replace workers so that we can protect the bottom line, but we have not invested in the technology that would protect workers that are essential, right? So there are certain things here that if that infrastructure had been built up beforehand, if the technology to be able to monitor, you know, stock and you know, monitor revenue, and that had already been put in place, you could have been able to very easily convert to a curbside pickup only model where you had enough in the way of, you know, telephone systems and other things like that, where people who didn't have internet could still access their groceries, where you could stagger pickup times, where you could make this work if you had used the technology to protect your workers. Instead, you use the technology to replace them and then keep the ones that you needed doing the most hazardous things that you haven't figured out how to automate yet. And it's just a really messed up way of thinking about how to use technology, that it's only there to harm people and to maximize profit, not there to protect people and make us more efficient.
Well, I think that's, to me too, like when leftists start talking about like class warfare and shit, I think a lot of people are like rolling their eyes like, all right, here we go. You know, the fucking hardline left is coming in and making a big deal out of thing that's not really that big of a deal. But like, listening to what Flo just said, it's like, that is a fucking act. Like, that's not the act of like a fucking business class that has any kind of sense of responsibility or like benevolence at all towards its workers, you know, and that fucking straight up is class warfare. And there's a lot of that, that's being laid out, like this being laid plain for people to see by COVID. I just really fucking hope that people remember this and take that lesson. I hope the workers like are able to look at their fucking employers and be like, yeah, motherfuckers, I see you. I fucking saw how it was.
I would take it beyond that. It's like that's exactly what it is. Yes. It is also, you know, and we've mentioned it before, that this crisis lays bare every single thing that is harmful about American capitalism. And to a degree where it's like we're not even surprised at the end of the day when we read the newspaper how deeply our federal government has failed the constituency, the workers, the lower class people. They are literally saying on one hand, like, oh, it's not safe to go out. And then on the other, it's like, yeah, but if you stay in, you're going to lose your job. And then,
right,
you know, probably starve. And then you'll be out on the streets in 6-7 months, right? We're not creating an environment that actually protects our constituency. And the reason for that is because they answer to capital.
Well, and because those people, the people who are on that rung of the social ladder are expendable. I mean, we're like that just as far as the federal government is concerned. The
according
workers are
to them,
expendable.
yeah. And
there's more. Actually, I mean, there's more who will come in behind them and fall into place, you know.
Yes, and we've caught some of them saying the quiet part loud on that too.
Right.
But like quite obviously. And like so that I try to be the one on the show here that's not a cynic, but like there's a cynical part of me watching this that's like this is precisely how this was designed to go down. And it's scary and sad and frustrating because right now, like, we don't have the power to make deep systemic changes, at least not on the federal level.
Right. No, I mean, I can only imagine, you know, I feel extremely grateful and privileged to as many issues as I have with the great state of California. I feel lucky to be here during this thing. Cause I'm having I am furloughed temporarily, but I'm in pretty good hands as far as unemployment insurance and all the rest of that goes. I can't even imagine what it would be like to be somewhere like Georgia, where the governor's like, all right, everything's back open. If you don't want to go to work, that's fine, but there's no more unemployment dollars rolling in. So it's either risk getting COVID or starve to death in the street. Dude, I think if I lived in Georgia, I'd be fucking lighting shit on fire right now. That makes me furious just to think about being put in that position, you know?
And there's a place like Florida where the Republican governor is trying to hide public health data, trying to make it so that it looks like there are fewer people who are dying of coronavirus because they closed too late and then opened too early. Right. Especially in a population that's that old, just wait and see what happens down there.
Well, and there's wildfires down there in the Panhandle right now too, and then give it a couple of months and the fucking hurricanes are going to start rolling through. Florida's in for a fucking rough 2020. Even without a fucking bullshit ass Republican governor.
And I think the East Coast is supposed to be getting a late snowstorm soon. So that could, prove really disastrous. I think the question that has come up a lot in terms of how the weather and other things are going to impact coronavirus. I think you all were talking about this on Monday. And you're like, I don't know, where's Florida? And I was thinking to myself, part of what we're not so sure about in terms of coronavirus and the weather is that a lot of the seasonal patterns are behavioral. So people, our K-12 population and our colleges are all in session during flu season, and they all close right near the end of flu season, and that helps because people are dispersed. And during the winter months, even if it's only by a few hours, people spend more time inside than they do during the warmer months. So you have the combination of people not congregating in these, in these two institutions, K-12 and then higher ed, and then also generally speaking, most people spending a little more time in less densely populated spaces outdoors. So thinking about just even the difference between going to a concert in the park where there are lots of people and going to a concert in a building where there are lots of people.
Right.
One is going to have a higher risk of cross-contamination than the other. And it's usually when you're in those confined spaces. So the interesting thing is, I'm not sure that the weather is going to have that big of an impact on the spread of COVID-19 because we closed down the schools early. We shut down those institutions already and more than usual, and it was still spreading pretty quickly. We've done a great job of flattening the curve, but we recognize that some of that seasonal stuff we've already done. So I don't anticipate like a decline because of that.
Isn't there, am I misinformed? Because I swear I thought that I read somewhere that like COVID-19 has a really hard time above like 80 degrees or something. Like it's...
Well, yes, but the thing we don't know, and this, so I think we should probably I'm at the place now where there are lots of things that we know, and there are also tons of things we don't know. And so it's helpful to just be able to own. There's some things we don't know.
There are things we think we know.
Right. We think we know, but it's not like confirmed. Like, really, where did coronavirus come from? Like, there are two working theories right now, but we don't know. Is it the bats? Is it the pangolins? Did it morph before it jumped species? Did it morph in an intermediary species? Like, we don't know some of those just basic answers. One of the things that we do know is that coronavirus seems to be heat sensitive. What we don't know right now is how much of the disease spread is happening from surfaces to begin with. Like, right. We've done all these tests to be able to say, hey, we've detected coronavirus on your keyboard or on a table or on a package or on a whatever. But viral detection and actually being infectious are two different things. Mm-hmm. I could detect virus somewhere and you could have contact with that surface and never be able to actually contract the disease from those viral particles being there. And so that's the question we don't know. And so that's part of the reason why we're not sure that the weather is going to have a big impact, because we know it's sensitive to heat, but we don't know how many people were getting it by touching similar surfaces. We were assuming that most people were getting it by closer contact and the respiratory droplet.
Yeah, so I guess two things. I just want to verify, so flu season is spring and fall, and that's whether or not we have school in session. But having school in session and things like that just exacerbates it because it's all these people in the same space at the same time.
Yes, exactly. So part of transmission is human patterns, right? Which is why we all are at home right now, because you can't transmit if you're not in close proximity. So yeah, flu season typically is September through April, and that coincides with the time when the weather cools down and people spend more time indoors. And it just so happens that because we're still on an agricultural calendar for our schools, that's when students are in class as well.
Okay.
But
it's not causal. Like, it's not like having classes during that time of year makes it flu season?
No, I mean, the flu exists, just like coronavirus exists, irrespective of our patterns. But that helps to aid the transmission of the flu, is that you have tons of children in childcare settings who are like, ooh, let's say what's going, and people touching things when they're in close proximity, and it's easy to spread in that way.
Okay, got it.
Can you explain that to me using a metaphor that involves soft drinks? Because I'm not 100%.
Coke and Pepsi do not cause polio.
I don't know, but it's one of those things that we think.
Neither
but do
does
we
Dr.
know
Pepper,
it for sure?
I've stopped drinking all of those, and I haven't had polio since.
Yeah.
So this is just me personally.
Yeah. If you are worried about it, just drink Pepsi instead of Coke, and it should be fine. And if your doctor has anything else to say about it, he's lying.
And so the second thing I was going to ask is, it's that, there are some models showing that, within a month, we're in our country going to have possibly 3,000 deaths a day, right? That's like a 9/11 every day, right? Due to coronavirus. And that is like, that's in the middle of summer. So I don't know, like that sort of tells me, well, maybe it's telling me just that like the scientists and epidemiologists making these models are saying like they're watching a Florida and a Georgia and a Tennessee open up like that. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to treat our models as if people are just going through their lives like an everyday.
They're having problems in Dallas right now too, right? Did I read about that? I think Dallas is having a spike because they opened up a bunch of stuff, I think. I might be wrong about that.
I mean, you expect an uptick when you open things up. So that part is not surprising. It's how big is the uptick will determine whether or not you reopened too quickly, and will determine whether or not you end up ultimately having to close down again.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I didn't have any follow-up after that.
Yeah. I mean, we were saying earlier before we started the show, we were like trying to discuss what we wanted to discuss on this, and like COVID, it's kind of one of those things right now where like it is kind of, like it's kind of what the news is about right now. But man, like, if sometimes I do feel like a little bad that maybe we're like fatiguing our listeners about having all these shows be about COVID. And like for those listeners, I just want to say like we have the COVID fatigue too.
Yeah. We're
like
looking at each other like, can we talk about something else?
Anything else? And then, yeah. But then, we're not living in like a time where there's like a ton of good news happening all over the place.
Yeah.
So.
And like really the news is like the notion of opening up. And like it's even those of us who respect the situation for the gravity that it is, like we want to, of course I want to be back working again. Like I miss what it feels like to sit in a coffee shop. I miss like, what like having an awkward interaction with a woman is like I'm not getting any of those.
He's remembering sex.
Can I make the sex?
Yeah. I don't remember what that's like. I don't remember a handshake. So like I get that sort of feeling of like, man, like this it is news to hear that like they're going to like open a thing or two up, even if it is like a store where you can go and buy a plant, Yeah. And so I also get that side of it.
I just wish that we were in a place where we could be honest about what people need and then be even transparent about the fact that that's not what we're giving people. Like, I don't think people are sitting at home like, gosh, I really wish Ross was open. With the exception of my friend Kula, who really wants Ross to reopen because she loves that place. But like, Kula aside,
I miss
most people are not sitting at home.
Yeah, okay. No, but like,
most people are not sitting at home going, you know what I'm missing is my in-person retail therapy. What people are missing is having Mother's Day with their parents.
Yeah.
What people are missing is being able to celebrate their birthdays with their friends, of being able to record their podcast together with their 3 other co-hosts. Like, that's what people are missing. And so what really kind of misses the mark to me is that the guidance is going to start with how do we return the economy to normal, and completely ignore that, like, some of the impact of this has also been that the calls to the suicide hotline are up 40%.
Right.
That, we have completely destabilized young people in transitions from 8th grade to high school, from high school to college, from college out into the working world. We completely destabilized their sense of normalcy and important life transitions, and we've denied them the opportunity to come together for that. I would be more in favor of us starting with, let's resume some graduations and some proms and some of the things that have been lost here, than us starting immediately with how do we jumpstart the economy so that people can make money, when there is an ability to be able to care for people right now and to extend the unemployment protections and to keep people safe, that could also allow them to, just as we loosen things up, loosen up the social isolation that's happened first.
Yeah.
Because that's honestly what we all need right now. Our mental health is suffering.
It is. Yeah. I totally agree with that, with the one footnote that all of the things you just brought up
Are people gathering in huge groups?
No. The interests of capital are using to weaponize their call. Like they're using this as a reason for their call to reopen the economy.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Right.
and we have to be able both to push back on them and also like make space for like these fucking needs that people have that we're all kind of suffering through.
Yeah.
And to your point, Skylar, you're right. Like some of them are larger gatherings, but what I'm saying is if we're trying to figure out ways to retool restaurants opening, I'd rather see us start with how do we retool prom and graduation for our seniors in a way that maybe you have to do it in groups of 20, right? So that the gym allows people to have enough, separation, and you can only dance with your date, or, just to try to like limit contact right across the school. But there could be a way to get something back for them. And it just feels, it feels so like depraved that our first thought is how do we make people who are ultimately very wealthy wealthier before we're actually operating in the best interest of any of the workers or any of the people who are living their lives and just trying to go through these transitions who've been ignored. Like that's the part that really frustrates me.
Yeah. You're describing events that are community oriented. They are not based on profit, except for the weird gowns we have to wear. It's ceremony, it's a rite of passage, and it's celebration of, people doing something or other. And yeah, I miss stuff like that, even though I'm not a graduation person.
I don't know, like ever since this thing started, I've definitely been on the thing of like, man, like this sucks for me as, like a middle-aged guy, but like, dude, what I mean, if
You're
I was
not
16
middle-aged yet, because we're living longer than 70. Okay,
I was trying to find like a non-controversial way to describe my age.
I love how widely we all view how old we are on this show, even though we're all within 2 years of each other.
All right. Like, whoa, middle age.
As a quarter age, or maybe
Skylar's
a third
like,
age.
Oh, I've seen some.
Yeah.
I'm looking at some Corvettes for my crisis.
As a third-aged man.
As adults. Just as adults.
As an adult.
As opposed to young adults or adolescents.
You guys know this is like 4 episodes in a row where like we talk about how old we are on the show, right? It's a lot. So it's really a lot.
We are not super young, but we are not middle-aged, okay? Because I'm planning on living more than twice my age right now, so I rebuke you.
Yeah, I'd say we're medium rare right now.
All right, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Take it. It's what? Like we're in April, yeah? Can we say that? Does that sound right?
Maybe.
Like
April feels great to me.
All right. We're in April. Anyway, getting back to my point that was extremely important and interesting. I don't know. I think this would be awful if I were a teenager. As for me, dude, I have a fucking house full of toys and a whiskey or a fucking fridge full of whiskey. You know what I mean? Like I'll get through this. Okay. I've also I have decades of like a lot of social interaction with like, my friends and like, blah, blah, blah. Like I have all this stuff, dude. If I was like 16 right now, I'd be climbing the fucking walls. Like my heart goes out to teenagers and adolescents right now, because this is a shitty fucking time in your life to have to stay inside
formative years
with your parents for like months at a time. That sucks.
Yeah.
So if you're a teen and you're listening to this, solidarity. Like I hear you, I see you. And when you're 21, by then I'll be like 70, but I'll buy you a drink.
And as your peer teen,
and also
it's hard for me to.
as
your peer,
as a youngster myself, something of a youngster,
as a fellow spring chicken.
As a fellow youth.
Oh my God.
Skateboard on my shoulder.
Brush your teeth and drink your water and take your vitamins.
All right. Have we all covered our age groups now?
Yeah,
Yes,
I think we did that effectively.
Well, should we try this and move on to the next topic? Do you think we have time?
Yeah,
for
let's
it?
do it. If we go long, we go long. I mean, I'm down if you guys are down.
Yeah, I mean it's super
Yeah.
important.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I agree.
all right. So let's talk about Ahmaud Arbery. The young man, he was 25 years old, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
2 months ago in I want to say it was rural Georgia. I'm not familiar with that county. He was out for a run, and can somebody give the details on this? What happened?
Yeah, there's a man and his son who claimed that they believed he might have been involved in a burglary of some sort, and chased him with a shotgun. He tried to avoid them. They approached him. He tried to defend himself. They shot and killed him, and until today had not been charged or arrested.
We're walking around free. Well, there's another piece to this that I feel like people should know, which is that the thing was precipitated by somebody making a 911 call that there was a black guy running around the neighborhood, and they had like a street, like I think he like looked into the window of an unfinished building or something while he was on his run, and somebody saw him do that and called the police about it. And then
Allegedly.
that somehow, allegedly.
And my understanding, it was the father who called the police.
Who is ex-law enforcement.
It's ex-law enforcement,
Yes.
worked for the district attorney's office. And I mean, to me, I don't believe a word they fucking say. Like,
No.
so if they claim he peeked through a window, like I have no.
Even so, the report that I read was that he like looked through the window of a house that was being built. It wasn't a residence. Like, it wasn't like he was casing anything.
Yeah, but if the words were coming from him, that doesn't.
Exactly. No, totally.
But
I just, the point that I wanted to get out with that is that like, if that's true, the thing was set off by somebody fucking calling the cops on a black guy jogging. And that, I mean, that's a thing that is hugely prevalent, not just in fucking rural shit-kicker Georgia. It fucking happens here in Sacramento, like fucking, if nothing else, your first instinct should not be to call the cops about shit, because it almost always makes shit fucking worse, especially when it's this kind of thing.
Well, again, it was him who called this time, and so this one's not like the racists on Nextdoor that we all know.
Oh no, this is a different one. I think it's a woman who called in. Who they have the 911 tape.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, somebody else did call in.
I heard about the 911 call. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'll check my sources on that, so don't take me verbatim on that, but I'm like 99% sure they have phone tape of somebody calling it in as like a suspicious person kind of a deal. Let me see if I can find that before I finish this up.
Yeah. I find myself exhausted. I'm exhausted at just the like stark comparison and a bit of the like gaslighting that I feel. I almost feel like sometimes I'm being punked. Like, how is it that we have armed folks who can storm state capitals and take over and live to tell the story, but there are far too many instances where Black people are just living their lives and end up dead. And somehow, after their death, we try to make their deaths their fault.
Right. Every
it's
time.
Like even in the injustice of it, then there's the cover up of like, oh, we're not going to arrest him. Oh, like the same thing happened in the Trayvon Martin case. It's like you have these vigilantes that are out hunting people, and then they don't even see justice in most instances. And that it's a double whammy. It's terrorism in the way that it operates to instill fear and to maintain a world order that, you know, says you're less than human. And I think this really frustrates me because I am only on Nextdoor because a neighbor contacted me about a post when I lived over by Sac High that they thought was about my husband, Tareen. And it was about a suspicious guy who was running through the neighborhood in the evening. And I was angry because I was like, isn't this fucking California? Like, this is supposed to be the land of, like, we go out and exercise and jog, and like, that's the stereotype. Like, how is it that this behavior of him running in the evening is suspicious? Like, why? And I knew why, but I was really frustrated by the idea that, like, that's all it takes to be put on notice in a neighborhood is, and even if no one ever does anything, there's the terror of feeling like you can't go out and live your life without being viewed by your neighbors as suspicious. So here we are afterward doing the you know, what feels like cautious, but also ultimately kind of stupid thing, which is, okay, well, Jareen, let's get you some reflective gear and let's make sure you're well lit so you look like you want to be seen. And, don't wear your headphones when you're out and, stay on the sidewalks and, wave and smile at people so it seems like you're trying to be friendly. It's like, I just want to go out for a run. Like, I have to exercise and be jolly about it. Like,
yeah.
Like,
you think I have to think about
so
that? Like, it's
work.
a totally different, yeah.
Right. And I'm like, here we are buying, like, vests and stuff and bright colored clothing so that he looks like he wants to be seen. And it's just so when I first saw the image,
when he's on a run.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And when I first saw the image, I was just like, it's just striking how much, like, if you were to just describe this guy, he sounds a lot like Tareen, like very similar, in terms of build, very similar complexion. And it was just like, wow, this is like the freaky mirror version of how that post on Nextdoor could have turned out, right? And I think that's just, it's demoralizing. It's demoralizing to have, like, the county say, hey, let's wear masks. And the first thing you have to think about is like, okay, well, I can't wear a homemade mask into the store without being concerned that somebody's not going to think I'm there protecting myself, but worried that I'm there to rob the place, right? Like, it's this added level of, like, consideration for your safety that you're doing all the time. And then also, you ultimately know it doesn't fucking matter because if you comply, if you're like, it doesn't matter. Like, you're doing the right thing is protecting yourself from people who are approaching you with a shotgun, and you still end up dead. And ultimately, it will be your fault because you were curious about the new development in your neighborhood.
Well, until they leaked that video footage of him being killed,
no charges.
Like, there was no way that they were going to go arrest these guys. Like, these guys were home free until that caught on, that went viral, and the whole nation started looking at him. And they went and picked him up today. But, like, there's no way, dude, in rural Georgia, like, those guys were going to walk. I mean, for one, he's fucking ex-law enforcement, which means that the law doesn't apply to him. I have to imagine that that's like that in Georgia. It certainly is like that fucking here,
there's nothing, everything about this story points to these guys are full-on white supremacists. They didn't want a black guy running past their house. I don't know how you view it any other.
I don't know, like, what else you need if you're like a fucking on a Georgia jury or you're a Georgia judge. Like, do you need them to be dragging him behind their truck? Like, does that, if a video would a video of that suffice to, like, be like an automatic conviction? Like, what do you need? Do we have to do some, like, awful fucking Klan shit? Like, will that get your fucking attention? Yeah. Like, I don't get it. Like, it's so fucking obvious,
Even the video, like, now there's all these questions, like, the guy taking the video was obviously a part of this group.
Right. I saw it today. He got doxxed, I think. So, like, people released a bunch of his info.
I mean, I was so mad watching this that I was like, I was happy when I saw the addresses of the murderers put out there. Like
same.
nobody
the
else is
justice
doing
system
shit.
isn't fucking doing
Yeah.
it. Like if you like vigilante justice is the only kind of justice that exists for crimes like
It's a
these.
fucking murderers.
Like fucking George Zimmerman is out walking around right now. George Zimmerman has like shot more people or something by now, hasn't he? Like George Zimmerman has committed a bunch of crimes since then, you know?
He has.
And it's like, dude, I like this shit to like my blood fucking boils at this shit, and I'm a fucking spectator, you know? I like Flo, I can't even imagine if I'm in your position and I'm married to somebody who like matches the description of somebody who was just like the blatant, obvious victim of a hate crime that was caught on video. I mean, like, I can't, man. I mean, even just watching it from the outside, I'm like so far beyond frustrated. I don't know.
Yeah.
Flo, you run a group, as does Tareen, right? He has Black Men Run, you run Black Girls Run. And like this is
I'm not the ambassador, but I have been a run coordinator for 2 of the run. Well, of course they're all on pause right now, but for 2 of the runs for Black Girls Run.
Okay.
Yeah, and then he's the Sacramento group coordinator for Black Men Run.
I mean, it sounded. Was this a concern for you, like even before your friend let you know about that racist post on Nextdoor? Because I've heard you talk about it since. I mean, I've heard you talk about like, every time Shireen goes for a run, I'm scared.
Yeah, I have not usually been concerned about my safety for this reason. I'm concerned about my safety because I'm a woman out running, and violence against women is commonplace. So, and I would frequently run on trails and things like that, but I like running in the morning. And so, the nice thing about Black Girls Run is that, we're going out together, even if everybody's not the same pace, we're coming back together. We, people used to ask at the beginning, I don't know if I want to take a picture. And it's like part of the reason we would always take a picture at the beginning is so that we could identify what everybody had on and give clear descriptions of who was out with us and what they looked like if heaven forbid something happened. And, so we try to make it fun. We're not out like, here's our safety photo, right? It was like, hey, we got our miles. Like, this is accountability. But there was also like I can describe how tall you are, about how much you weigh, what you had on, all of those kinds of things. And so for me, that was always a safety concern was, being out sometimes on trails, by myself, especially if I happen to be one of the fastest people out in my group, or maybe one of the slower people if the really fast people are out, and just kind of being by myself. But I hadn't really considered the danger of going for a run, because to me it seems so obvious. Like, unless you see me running with a flat screen television, like it just seems so obvious that this is the activity and this is what we're out doing, right? And then when that post came, I was like, it really was kind of a jolt to the system of like, something that to me seems so benign is still viewed as threatening in a community where people either have active hate for one another or general, mistrust because of, white supremacy and internalized racism. And so that part is the part that I think our brains don't want to capture just how bad it is all the time, because then you'd be almost like lulled into paralysis. And so, unable to do anything. So you start to convince yourself, right? If I have the talk with my kids, they'll know how to handle themselves. And so maybe the police won't kill them. If I wear my seatbelt, if I, put my hands on 10 and 2 and say, yes, officer, and no, officer, this is going to work out well. Like, you're going through all of these motions, hoping to lower your risk, but ultimately knowing that sometimes some of those things aren't always going to matter.
Look at how they did Philando Castile. Like,
exactly
doing exactly what
someone
he was being
who was honest, who was a legal gun owner, who, right? Like, and he ended up dead. So, I think sometimes we try to convince ourselves that there are things that we can do in our own best interest. And I don't want to say that those things maybe sometimes won't lower your risk of something happening, because maybe they will. Like, I don't want to take that sense of safety away from the people who are doing it out of a feeling of like, let me try to have my best chance of coming home. But we would be incredibly foolhardy if we believed that pulling up your pants and speaking the Queen's English is going to save you. It just,
right.
That's not how this works.
Well, that's why it makes me fucking crazy whenever anything like after Stephon Clark was killed here, there's like, you know, there's the like fucking racist opposition to the thing is like, well, like, why was he running? You know, like, blah, 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 blah. Like, why, you know, if you run from the cops, of course, like you're putting yourself in danger. And it's like, dude, you're like, if you are like a young black man in a certain neighborhood, you're in danger as soon as you step out of your house. And like, if the cops pull up on me, like, dude, I've been watching fucking videos of guys like Philando Castile complying with police orders and then being executed anyway. So if I'm a young black guy and I'm out fucking cruising around and a cop rolls up on me, like, dude, you're rolling the dice either way. Like, you can run for your life, or you can stop and comply and hope that the cop is honest. But I mean, there isn't like an obvious, oh, this is what you should do to protect yourself, because the truth is, as soon as you leave your house, you're a fucking target. You know?
I wonder how many of those, like, well, why didn't he comply, people there are even to convince anymore. Like, I think we're reaching, I hope we're reaching a point where it's like the general population is like, yeah, this is really fucked up. And I feel like in recent years, I think the Black Lives Matter movement and the decarceration movement have been phenomenally successful. And just little things too. It's like white people didn't know this 15 years ago. Like, I remember my buddy telling me about when he would drive around in LA with his friends as a kid, as a teenager, and how if the cops pulled them over, they all had their hands on the seat in front of them. And I was like, we ran from cops for fun in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Like,
because there were no consequences. Like,
no,
the worst
none
thing
at
that was going to
all.
happen is they were going to tell my parents and I would get in trouble.
Oh no. And I was just like, and I think it's finally reaching our general societal consciousness. I hope, man. Like, I think the Stephon Clark movement like moved some laws in California that, like, I don't think we would have seen for a long time if the community here didn't come together and make them happen. Yeah, like, we can do a lot better, but like, I don't know. Like, this is like one of the only things where I'm like, maybe that's something to point to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Dave, I think I've told you this story before, but like my like number one instance for like when I understood the concept of white privilege, but did not fully understand white privilege. So I was like leaving somewhere on my bike and I went to unlock it. My lock broke. So my bike was just locked to this rack and I couldn't get it off. And I was like a few blocks from my house. So I just went home and came back with some tools. But the bike rack was like right next to a bus stop. And I got back there and there were like 12 people, like not even 5 feet away. And I just walk up off the street to my bike and like drill and hammer at this lock until I finally knock it off. It took me like 2 or 3 minutes to like hammer this lock off of my bike.
And they're just
nobody even looked at me. Like, no, like there were like 15 people standing right there and nobody, like people didn't even look at me. And I was kind of like, because I was walking back and I was expecting to have to like, oh no, this is my bike. Like, here's a picture of me from last month with my bike, you know, wasn't an issue. I could have fucking walked up and broke the lock off of anybody's fucking bike in front of all 15 of those people, and they would have just let me ride off on it and gotten on the bus. And I was like, yeah, 100%. That happened because I'm a white guy. 100%. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind.
That's actually an episode of What Would You Do that used to come on like Friday nights on ABC or something, and they have 3 or 4 different people all steal a bike, and you can't do anything but laugh at it because it's gendered as well. So like the white guy comes up and steals the bike, and like somebody is like, "Hey, is that your bike?" And he's like, "Is it your bike?" Like, so he's not even like trying to like, he's like, "Is it your bike?" And they're like, "No," and then they just kind of wander off, right? The white woman comes up to steal the bike, and these guys come up and help her steal the bike.
I saw this.
They're like, she's young, she's cute, and they're like, "Is this your bike?" And she's like, "No," and they're like, "Ha ha ha," and they're like helping her steal the bike. The black guy starts to walk up, and three people are like, "Whose bike is that? What are you doing here? Do you belong here?" Like, he doesn't even get to the bike before people are already stopping and on their phones and trying to figure out what's going on. And it's like, that is the privilege. Like I always think about how realistic it was that like when Oceans, 11, 12, and 13 were coming out, like Bernie Mac's character was just supposed to sit there and like sit at the table and gamble or do something else, because there's no way he's getting away with that. Like, he got stopped at the door by security to get a pat down, and your heist just fell apart, right? Like, it could not rely on people who are just going to be seen as suspicious as soon as they walk into a place. Like,
right.
That's not a reality, right? When we first started talking about, moving away from plastic bags, and stores weren't always offering paper ones and that sort of thing, and it wasn't quite in vogue to just always bring your own, I had kind of, if I was buying a few things, I would stop getting a bag. But I always I was raised to make sure you always get a receipt. And some people are like, "Oh, no, I don't need I'm not going to return any of this stuff." And I'm like, I always get a receipt, because I never want to be in a place where somebody says, "You took this," and I have no way to prove that I paid for it.
Right.
So I'm here saying, "No, I don't want your bag." And then I have people who were like, some of my black friends were like, "You don't want a bag?" I was like, the bag is also proof that I bought this thing, because the bags are at the end of the thing. And like, I have my bag, I have my receipt. I'm trying to mitigate risk here, right? So they're just the things that sometimes we're not even thinking about, that are part of the protection that you go through to make sure that you're not seen as suspicious.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we were in a group talking about the receipt thing, where like every white person was like, "Why do I need a receipt?" And every black person was like, "What?"
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, the receipt is so important. You're always trying to just make sure, like, I have proof that I wasn't here. And I think that's even part of the reason why I'm not a big shopper. So I don't do it online either. So I can't say that's the only reason why. But I never liked going shopping, because I always felt this pressure that if I go into a place and don't find something I want, that now I look suspicious.
You're going to be walking out before, without buying anything, and it looks suspicious.
And now I don't want to feel pressure to have to buy something just because I didn't like something, right? Like, the only time I want to do that is when I'm wine tasting, because there's no way to lose, right? I gotta buy wine, so let's just buy something, right? But like, when I'm shopping, I don't want to buy a trinket every place I go just to seem like I'm not stealing. And so it kind of takes some of the joy out of it. So I really only go shopping if there's something I know for sure I'm getting in a store, because it's not there. There's always that constant pressure of like, how am I going to be perceived?
Yeah.
And is that going to be safe?
Can we bring this local? Because we haven't talked about this on the show, but there was that cop, and this was a national news story, but this was local. Where was it? Rancho
right?
Cordova? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The video of the cop, like, effectively just beating a 14-year-old boy. Has
him on the ground, punching him, like beating him up. I didn't actually watch the video.
Yep.
I watched that and was like, I know what I'm about to see. I know it's just going to make me really mad and sad.
Sometimes these stories come out and you're like, I was just like, I know what this is. Right now. I have seen this video 100 times already. Like, it's just going to make me feel awful if I watch it. But especially friends in like the Black community, it seems like a lot of folks are like, I don't need to see this. I've seen this before. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not seen a single one of the only one I saw was where there was a young man. He was white. He was experiencing a mental health crisis, and his Black therapist was helping, and somehow or another ended up getting shot, but he didn't die.
Yeah.
And I knew he didn't die, so that was the only reason I watched the video. But I have never watched the Eric Garner one. I have never watched the Philando Castile one. I have never watched the Walter Scott. Like, I will not watch these videos because I'm a visual learner, and I don't have a photographic memory, but images stay with me. I don't want those images in my psyche.
Yeah. I mean, I think
I don't want to replay that.
Philando Castile was the one that broke me. I watched that and was like so heartbroken and was just like, I don't know. Like after that, I was like, I can't do. I get it. I know what they're doing. I can't watch this shit. It is too much for me.
You know the story with everyone. You know it before you see it. And then like what makes it worse is then you're going to have the fucking apologia people on social media being like, well, why didn't they, parsing out every fucking frame of it. Why didn't they do this?
You want to have a fucking bad time.
And it's like, fuck you.
I used to be on Reddit. I still go to Reddit, but the Sacramento subreddit after the Stephon Clark shooting was like, it was
no, thank you.
Really, really awful. I mean, it is the most ashamed that I've been of this city that I can remember was our city subreddit after Stephon Clark was killed. It was really toxic and awful.
Well, it goes all the way to the top because Anne-Marie Schubert, did basically the same thing on national television a year later. So. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we kind of got off track though. I
mean, it's all the same topic, but yeah.
But I didn't follow this up. The cop was fired. Is that right? Like, did he face any consequences other than like?
My understanding was that the police were investigating. That was the last update that I'd seen.
Oh, good.
That the officer was under investigation. Yeah.
I got a press release from the sheriff's department just being like, well, the kid should have listened to the officer.
Kid's 14, right?
Yeah. And also
and it was because he had some sort of like
tobacco.
I don't know if it was a vape pen or something like that, but he had I think it may have been a Swisher Sweet, like a cigarette or something like that. And And
the cops were like, we thought he was 18. And then they're also like, well, he had tobacco. So then we had to,
If I was that kid's dad, dude, I'd be out to fuck somebody up over that. Like, I can't. Can you fucking imagine, like, getting that phone call? That, like, some cop just kicked the fuck out of your 14-year-old son?
Exactly.
I would lose my fucking mind.
But also, like, his dad's probably just happy he's alive.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's that side of it, too.
The big thing that stands out to me is, and this is the biggest argument I think against some of the, well, let's just reform. Why don't we do community policing? This officer was a problem-oriented or policing or a pop officer, right? Like, he was supposed to be the one who was the better trained to de-escalate and to do all of these things.
Yeah, if your guy who's trained to de-escalate is beating the fuck out of 14-year-old boys in the street, maybe take a second look at that fucking program. Maybe
the pop officer certainly popped off. So like, and that's like, it's cultural, it's systemic, it is within law enforcement, and we say it every episode. But I don't think you can say it enough. Like, this isn't something that can be fixed internally. It's not like we can just like be like, oh, we can do community policing where they're friends with all the grandmas in the neighborhood. Like, that's not going to fix it. That's never going to
locking these guys up. If the cops commit crimes, put them in prison. Let's fucking start there. Like, make the cops understand that there are, like, if you truly intend for there to be consequences for police breaking the law, then treat them like criminals when they do. Maybe start there. Or just come out and be like, the cops are above the law and they can do whatever the fuck they want. And the worst that will happen to them is we'll put them in a different district and let them keep going.
We've been talking for a while about getting someone from the Anti-Police Terror Project on here on the show, and we should do that in the next few weeks. Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
real quick, I want to go back so I pulled up that CNN article, and just so I am not misinforming our listeners, I'm going to quote this article because there was a 911 call that was not that guy.
Okay.
This says on February 23rd, he was viewed as a threat, a thief. Someone in Satilla Shores called 911 to say, quote, a black male running down the street, Arbery, might be responsible for a rash of burglaries. Quote, there's been break-ins out here. There's a guy in a house right now. It's a house under construction, said the caller, whose name is censored on the 911 tape. That's fine. I'll get them out there, the operator says. I just need to know what he was doing wrong. Was he just on the premises and not supposed to be?
Can I ask what the date of the article is?
This article came out on... Sorry, I'm getting pop-up problems.
No, it's okay. But because I know that the
came out yesterday.
Okay. Because I also know the older guy called 911, and he was quoted as saying that, like, basically they asked what he was doing, and he said he's running around the neighborhood. So
yeah.
Maybe it sounds like these were two separate calls.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Either way, yeah. Just wanted to clarify that because the last thing I want to do is put up a bunch of misinformation on Voices River City.
Well, I think we're at time, but like I think if we want, we should dive more into this in future episodes because this is the stuff that just really fucking gets your blood boiling. And like you said, Flo, it's like we can't, like the Black community can't even just like try to live through a pandemic. Like there's this shit too.
Right.
I'm saying, it's just like, come on. Like no days off.
Yeah.
And it would be one thing if it were like, oh man, this awful thing happened, and then the cops arrested these guys and prosecuted them, and they're in prison. But that's never, ever, ever how it works.
No, these guys are getting off.
Oh yeah, I will.
We already know that
we'll see. I'm trying to work on my cynicism.
They feared for their lives. He was 8'12" and 475 pounds. He looked like Hulk.
He was leaning in aggressively.
Well, one of the things I've already seen people saying is that because he
reached for his waistband, right?
He runs for the gun.
Yeah.
So I think what happens is he's running up. The dude points a shotgun at him. He runs over and grabs the shotgun in order to like not get shot by it. And people are like, well, he grabbed his gun. Like, of course, now the guy has to defend himself.
You pull out a gun on someone. Like the rules of the street are, if you pull it, my assumption is you're planning on using it. Yeah. And so unless I am going into this actively suicidal as a generally self-preserving human, my goal is going to be to not get shot.
Right.
In fact, that is maybe a goal that should be more explicit in my life every day, but sort of dangles in the back of my head every day of like, in addition to the things on my to-do list tomorrow, editing some things, writing a few things, to not get shot tomorrow. Like I'd like to live through the day and not get shot. So if I'm faced with a gun in my face from somebody who I don't know, who is unidentified to me as some sort of authority figure, I have no reason to assume that complying with you is in my best interest.
Right.
Also, we don't know if he was shot first and then went for it because he was shot multiple times. So we're kind of working off conjecture here.
Oh, well, they have a video and you can see him run.
Right? Like,
I saw him after the first shot on the video. Yeah, it was after the first shot that he was going for the gun.
No.
But if the situation were reversed and this was a black guy and his son who pointed a shotgun at a white guy, like everybody would understand why the white guy went for the gun because you pointed a shotgun at me.
Oh, he would be a hero.
That's right. I'm just like, I think the thing that's most dehumanizing about it is that like you're not allowed to have very normal human responses to things, even those are villainized. So
totally, yeah.
A thing that everybody would say is a totally reasonable response is suddenly now pathological because you did it.
Yep. I mean, no, but like that's how this has worked forever. And this is, you know, this is again, I mean, this was part of why I wanted to create Voices, because like our legacy media does exactly what the cops want it to do. And it's fucking insane. And you can't fix it from the inside out. You can't do it within the media because the editors won't let you. You just publish basically what the PR releases say for the SAC PD, for the sheriff's department, after they've killed all of these fucking people, right? And so like the whole the narrative needs to change, and not in a way that like skews it in a different direction, in a way that writes it, in a way that pulls
Right.
says, okay, who's right here, and actually treats the cops press release as stakeholders and not as authorities on what happened.
I'll tell you what, one
Correct.
step you could do right now is take the fucking fund that we use to pay out on lawsuits against people who sue the cops for fucking doing illegal shit. Take it out of the pension fund. Let the fucking cops pay for all those lawsuits, man. You'll watch them start turning each other in. If that fucking happens, that thin blue line will fucking clear up real quick if it's coming out of their fucking pockets.
So
I don't know.
is there anything we can not do to get our riled up listeners to be a part of this? You know, be a part of making things right.
Scowl at the cops.
Flo didn't like that one when I brought it up last time.
Scowl. I do think, you know, elevating this conversation with, you know, folks in our social network is one of the things that has to happen. Like, and the conversation is not just about the case, it's about these as social conditions. And I would love for these conversations, especially in spaces that I'm not going to be, to circle back to. Can you imagine what it's like to be dealing with all the stress that everybody else is around a pandemic, and then also have to be worried about, can I wear a mask safely in public? Can I go out for my daily exercise and not be hunted and not be suspicious? Can I, right? Like, just think about the baseline level of stress. And so when you start to hear things like, oh, the Black community is more impacted by COVID-19, not going to, well, yeah, because they're all barbecuing at each other's houses and won't follow instructions, and maybe go to, this is a stress response, and your immune system is tapped when every day you have to fight to preserve your livelihood, and then have to deal with economic stress and relationship stress and traffic and whatever else is going on in your life. It's like that's happening on top of your physical being is viewed as threatening, or is viewed as less intelligent, or is viewed as less worthy of compassion, is, you know, your normal human emotions. I mean, like I've had a conversation with my executive director about a project that I was managing, that I was really trying to manage relationships and was having a difficult time sort of bringing down the hammer, as like I needed to, you know, do some executing and some command. And he was kind of asking me like, well, you know, that's your strength. Why aren't you doing this? And I was like, because I'm the only Black woman on this project, and I don't want to be the angry Black woman. Like, so I'm mitigating what should be the strength in this, right? That's the thing that needed to happen, and I'm pulling back on it because I'm concerned that in doing so, I'm going to be viewed as angry.
You won't be taken seriously.
And like, but anger is a normal human emotion. Like, anger allows us to be able to get to the root of what's bothering us. Like, but there are people who have to find ways to be able to channel that emotion into more palatable things. I mean, this dude is running through the neighborhood waving at people. I'm sure he's a friendly guy. I'm a friendly person. But sometimes you wave so that you seem like you wanted to be seen.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with like yelling at women. So you should smile more. It denies us the ability to just be having a bad fucking day and be out for a run and not want to speak to you because I just don't fucking feel like it. Like, it denies you that ability because you have to go, saying hi to Karen is a way to keep myself alive today. Hi there, how you doing? Everything is good, right? And it's just like, it's dehumanizing.
Yeah. So there's also the education part, I think, especially for like listeners who are more privileged, right? You know, white men. If you know this stuff, if you've learned this, if you're understanding it, like it takes a particular amount of energy to impart this knowledge to other people. And honestly, like a lot of Black people are tired of doing that. Not only that, they have their own stressors in their lives, you know, as Flo just laid out. So if you are a person of particular privileges, again, white or male or whatever, start speaking to the people in your life who don't understand really what this dynamic is and what it's about, and start trying to educate them on this. The ones that are open to being educated at the very least.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would
connect it to the other things. I think that's the big thing for me, is like, draw the connections, because I think that's where the aha moment comes in, is being able to connect this and say, imagine how that impacts the rest of your week. Imagine having to go to work the next day. Imagine having to parent and to educate the next, like, when you're constantly having to do this, right? It's kind of like what, you know, Gene Kelly said about, you know, like, you know, dancing, you know, he was like, imagine she had to do it backwards and in heels, right? Like, that's the thing about it, is like, there's this added level to the dance of having to do all of this in addition to just living your life.
Yeah.
I would say, if you're going to take anything away from it, and I've said this before on the show, but I think it applies to, I mean, a lot of the things we talk about, honestly, but it definitely applies to this one, is like, be mad about this. Like
Mm-hmm.
this, you should, being angry is correct in this in this circumstance, but don't let it burn you out. Like, you can't just like be mad at the sky until you're too sleepy to do anything else. Like, be mad, but use that anger to like turn that anger into an enthusiasm for like, how can I affect change? Like, where do I go? Who do I talk to? Who's working on stuff? What can I do? You know, let your anger channel into through that way, and we can change things around, you know, but it starts, all of this starts with people not being willing to accept the status quo. And right now, Black people being expendable targets while they're jogging is the status quo. I that's completely unacceptable to me. I imagine it is for you too. So fucking get mad, get involved, and let's fucking do something about it. There's more of us than there are of them.
Yeah. Also, just to add, if you've been in this fight for a while and you're exhausted and you have fatigue, that's okay too. You know, the Stephon Clark thing, I think, was traumatic for a lot of people, and I think a lot of people needed some time to take a step back from their advocacy work, and that's also okay. But like, if you're mad and ready and you've got it like packed away, that energy, like, let's go for it.
Yeah, let's go. Well, Dave. I don't even think I can do it. Well, I'm unemployed, Dave. There it is. I just said it. I'll just say it. I'm furloughed from work, damn it. I can't hold it inside anymore. I have to get it out on the show, because our listeners deserve to know what's happening in my personal life.
This is the first time you were telling us this, Tyler.
Yeah, well, guys, every episode I want to tell you this so bad, and it's like bubbling up inside of me, and it kills me to have to like hold it back.
In the back of my head, I'm like, I wonder what's up with Skylar, if he's okay.
Yeah, like all those texts where I'm like, no, I'm cool, I'm at work. Man, lies. All of them.
Tyler.
So But I mean, that's not the worst of it, right? Like that's bad, but that could be worse. The problem is that I've used up all of my free time that I have not being at work, reading all and listening to all of this great voices content, but I'm out. I think I read it all. I mean, I've been to every corner of the internet. I think I've seen all there is to see. Dave, I'm dying for more voices content, man. You got to help me, man. You got to help me out. Where can I get? I need more, man. I'm a junkie for it.
I'm happy to help, but maybe can we condense it this time around because this is a long episode. I'll just say that we're all at voicesrivercity.com. I've got 2 essays in my inbox right now that I'm dying to publish. And again, to reiterate, patreon.com/voicesrivercity. That pays for our equipment, our journalism, our essays, our White Claw. And we're just excited to be doing what we're doing, and it's a hard time right now, but we will continue to amp things up the way we have been amping it up with voices, and I think it's been really fun for all of us to kind of try and add to the public sphere, like not just as like Flo, it's been a blessing to have you on because you are a public health expert and you are an expert in the issues that we want to cover right now. And it's just it's just been like phenomenal to have you ever since March. So
Thanks,
like,
Dave.
yeah, I like you just, I just think you add so much to the community here, and I know that our listeners are like, we've got journalists, we've got public policy people, we've got young leftists listening, and it's just really exciting to have a voice like yours, not just you, but like Shannon, who runs Mary House, and Skylar, who is basically the Ira Glass of leftist Sacramento.
Yeah, let's get that going.
I love Ira Glass.
So, I mean, all of this
Today
is
on
to
Voices.
say that's where to find us. And let's not get into Twitter names or whatever right now. Just thank you, everyone. Dean, once again, go fuck yourself,
Yeah,
be
eat
brave,
shit,
bold
Dean.
robot. Yeah. We've had just about enough of your smiley, happy tunes. We're looking at 2020, and we're learning that was all bullshit. That was a lie.
We're gonna replace the theme song.
That world
with
does
Olive.
not exist anymore.
I would nominate. I think we should do the new theme song. Should just be Dave with his harmonica and Olive accompanying him,
just
and that'll
howling
just be
along
it.
with me.
Oh!
She just perked her ears up. She looks bored as hell. All right, I should take her for a walk.
Probably everybody is bored as hell right now. So let's take it down.
I love this episode.
All right, guys. Well, it's been a pleasure. Everybody, stay healthy.
It has.
Stay sane, stay safe, and stay away.
From us.
Feel better, Shannon. We'll get you in here next time.
Yes, we miss you, Shannon.
All right, good night.